Uh, there is one item on the GST Council which was not taken up, which is a carryover item from the first meeting, which was on the calculation of the annual increase in revenue, which is a formulation which is required for determining the compensation payable to any state losing out on revenue. That was not to be taken up today, and it will be taken up in the next meeting of the council, which will be held for 3 consecutive days. The dates have been slightly altered because of the convenience of some members. The original dates were 17th, 18th and 19th October. The dates now will be 18th, 19th and 20th of October. So it's been just pushed by 1 day. One of the, obviously the first item has to be the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. With regard to one item recorded in the minutes, with regard to the service tax assessments in the new dispensation, there was a long discussion on the interpretation of the decision taken in the last meeting, and that discussion consumed quite a lot of the timing today. That discussion was inconclusive, and therefore it will continue in the next meeting on the 18th. On the regular items of agenda, there were 2 items on the agenda. One was with regard to the draft GST rules. Now these rules are with regard to registration for the purposes of the GST, rules for payment, rules for returns, rules for refunds, and rules for invoices, debit and credit notes. Now from registration, payment of tax, distribution of tax, how that is to be done. Why I call them draft rules? Because these are rules which will be notified once the act is passed. So in anticipation of the GST Act, all the legislations, these will be rules which are framed under those legislations. So once the act is passed by the parliament or by the state legislature, as the case may be, we want the draft rules to be ready in anticipation so that the rules can be notified immediately. Now these set of rules have been prepared by the technical experts, that's the officers assisting us. These 5 sets of rules were taken up for consideration, and all the 5 sets of rules have been approved. So we are in that sense in a state of readiness with subordinate legislation once the act itself is approved. The second major item on the agenda today was the treatment of the existing tax incentives by the central and the state governments. Now the central government has given certain exemptions as far as those 11 states are concerned, Northeast and the Hill states. These are with regard to the levy of central excise. Similarly, when states incentivized industries to invest in their states, they've held out a series of incentives and exemptions, and some exemptions from certain taxation laws. Now, it's quite possible that some of the exemptions may get phased out, but for the exemptions which may remain, how will these exemptions fit into the GST system? So the meeting, the council took up for discussion the management of these exemptions, and it was agreed that there would be a levy of tax under the GST system on all exempted entities. Once the tax is levied, the central government or the state government which gets that tax would then reimburse from the budget that quantum of tax back to the exempted entity. So it will be like so you'll have the GST system in operation where everybody has to pay the tax, but if you are an exempted entity and the center or the state decides to continue that exempted entity, then they would be entitled to that amount being given back to them. Now the details of this in each case would be worked out, which exempted entities would remain, which would not remain, would also be worked out by the central and the state governments. As far as the center is concerned, it's predominantly the northeast and the hill states. And as far as the states are concerned, these are specific industries. These could be also some individual generalized items that depends from every state to state. So the states will have to take the call as to which are the exempted entities, because they would then get the tax and then reimburse the tax back to those entities. So with these, we have completed 4 items completely last time, 2 items completely today. 1 item, the 5th item last time we substantially discussed it, except that one issue which remains outstanding. And today there is that interpretation of the service tax division of authority between the center and the states. There is some discussion on this which is inconclusive. Now after this, with these 2 items remaining, of course the rates would be the big item to be discussed in the next meeting, and thereafter we will go to the draft of the 3 GST laws. देखिए वो एक इशू है, क्योंकि उस इशू के ऊपर पिछली बार चर्चा नहीं हुई थी, तो हमने ये सोचा है कि जिन एरियाज में सर्विसेज पे स्पेसिफिक टैक्सेस स्टेट से लगाए हुए थे, जो हमारे ऑफिसर्स हैं, इस बीच में वो डिस्कस करके अपना फॉर्मुलेशन अगली मीटिंग के सामने रखेंगे. विवाद नहीं था, लेकिन ये अनडिसाइडेड इशू था जिसपे जो पिछली बार चर्चा में नहीं आया था, तो इसलिए स्वाभाविक है कि एक्सपर्ट्स उसको एग्जामिन कर लें और अगली मीटिंग में वो चर्चा में आ जाए. You see, the central government understanding is very clear that we had finalized this arrangement with regard to the existing service tax providers, and then officers in the state would be trained, new cases will be shared. What happens to these services which are taxed partly by the center, partly by the state, which the experts will examine that and then report in the next meeting, and then we'll take a full decision with regard to that.
So, 2 questions in the exemption part. So we understand that many of the hill states and northeast states, for them it 10-year tax holiday for industrial exemption is getting over in 2020. GST rolls out from April 1, 2017. So this tax levy will also work as a grandfathering shield for those entities which
No, in case, you see, it's not necessary to grandfather everything, but if you do grandfather it, then the process would be the payment of tax and the reimbursement. So it will be like a direct benefit, cash being returned.
And so one more question, there are lots of other exemptions also, like the non-industrial exemption. Central has removed this, some part of it is also there with state taxes. So when would that come up for discussion?
नो वो इंडिविजुअल इश्यूज जब डिस्कस होंगे उनके उसमें आएगा. दैट्स एन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इश्यू. आज तो हमने प्रिंसिपल बाय विच द एग्जेम्पशंस आर टू बी डेल्ट विद.
So what will happen in cases where, like, say, software or construction work contracts wherein both goods and services component are there? Will that remain with state or with center? How does that get?
That's what is referred to the officers committee, because they were talking about the deemed goods kind of a concept.
They are supply contracts.
Yeah, supply contract. So the question is ki what happens to those kind of cases where there is both goods and services? Of course, now it becomes one thing called supply under the GST. So there is some misunderstanding. So the honorable chairman said that an officers committee will look at this and come back to the GST.
इसमें एक और इशू आएगा जो आपने अभी नॉर्थ ईस्ट और हिल स्टेट्स का पूछा, जिसको रिजॉल्व करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वो इंसेंटिव सेंटर ने दिया हुआ है. अब जो टैक्स सेंट्रल की किटी में आएगा उसमें से सेंटर का शेयर केवल 58% रहेगा. 42% डिवोल्यूशन से राज्यों को चला जाएगा. और इसलिए 58 जब हमारे पास रहेगा तो हम 58 ही करेंगे. बाकी 42 फिर कैसे होगा उसके ऊपर भी एक अरेंजमेंट करना पड़ेगा. बट आई कांट गेट 58 एंड रिफंड 100. नहीं, देखिए हम लोग ये प्रयास कर रहे हैं दो. एक तो कंसेंसस से सारे निर्णय हो और जहां तक संभव वोटिंग की नौबत ना आए, क्योंकि जो फेडरल स्पिरिट है वो उसी से मेंटेन होती है. और दूसरा हम लोग कोशिश ये कर रहे हैं कि जहां तक संभव हो कोई डिसेंट्स ना हो. जो अनडिसाइडेड इशू है उसको अगली मीटिंग में ले जाओ, फिर दोबारा चर्चा करो और फिर कोई वाया मीडिया निकाल के उसमें से हल ढूंढो. और अभी तक, क्योंकि अभी तक कुल मिलाकर मैं कहूं तो बड़े आइटम्स हमारे 7 एजेंडा में आए हैं. 5 पिछली बार और 2 इस बार. अब केवल 2 रिलेटिवली माइनर आइटम्स, एक ये मिनट्स और एक वो इंक्रीमेंट विच इज अ पार्ट ऑफ एन आइटम, स्मॉल पार्ट ऑफ एन आइटम, जो अनडिसाइडेड है. बाकी कंसेंसस के साथ